This is terrifying.
This
is intimidating to me.
It will only get worse. Sorry, I always have a phobia when I'm in front of a live audience. It's like, my socks aren't long enough. You're going to see way too many parts of anyway.
Your ankles are...
I guess I should start it off with a tweet. Todd. What was on my Twitter feed today? The President of the United States, 9 o'clock this morning. Fascinating to watch people writing books and major articles about me, and yet they know nothing about me and have zero access. Fake news.
I think he was
Shockingly, this came, I would say, within minutes of your first interview on television about your book with our friends at Morning Joe.
I think it was right after the Today Show. I'm sure he was talking about Hillary Clinton.
Of course. Of course. Fascinating to me.
Who wouldn't necessarily have access to his campaign.
Do you think you know Donald Trump?
Yes, I do. I think Donald Trump is somebody that's easy to get to know if you're given enough time to be in the same room as him, or just to observe him for, 510 days straight.
What's the first time you had a conversation with him?
Oh, God, the first time I had a conversation with him was, a full conversation, was the day I sat down with him to do that interview back in
So that
July
was at that first
2015.
Interview. Now, I remember that day very vividly.
I know, because you met me for coffee, and you said, hey, listen, he's going to go after you. And I said, all right.
Yeah, little did we know. But so your first conversation before the lights go on, or when you're prepping, what'd you make of him?
Well, the first thing he did was he sauntered in. Donald Trump has a way of walking. He just kind of glides in, and the suits, the jacket flaps just kind of flap around him, and he's got an entourage all the time. And he sits down, and the first thing he does is he adjusts his jacket, and he looks at the camera, and he wants to see what he looks like. Well, first he wanted a photo with me. That was interesting. Or I assumed that I wanted a photo with him. But he wanted to see how he looked, and that's normal. I mean, everyone wants to see how they look in an interview. I didn't really think much of that. But the first way he really addressed me was he sat down, he looked at me, and he said, you know, my whole life has been a win, don't you? And I said, oh, okay. How do you respond to that?
What are you supposed to say?
Congratulations, I guess. That was the first time we had a talk, but it was not the first time that I realized he knew who I was. The first time that happened was the very first time I was in the same physical vicinity as him, and that was June 30th, 2015. It was the day that NBC assigned me to Donald Trump's campaign. I drove myself up to New Hampshire to cover this rally he had, and it was like a 200-person rally around a backyard pool, not the Donald Trump rally that everybody got to know. And I was standing there in the rain, tweeting what he was saying and trying to figure out what exactly he was and how he fit into things and what in the world I was doing there, because I had no reason to be there. And I heard my name. Katy, you're not paying attention to me. And I looked up and I thought...
Like a school teacher moment? Like, Katy, stop chewing gum, pay attention. Was it that?
It seemed that way, and there was a kind of a smirk on his face. And I remember just yelling out across the pool at him, I'm tweeting what you're saying, which he liked. And then he moved on with the conversation.
That first, so he announces, and the president of NBC News at the time is a woman by the name of Deborah Turness, and she comes to you. I remember a conversation she and I had about the idea of you covering Donald Trump. And I remember the conversation where we concluded, well, we don't know. Maybe she'll be into it, maybe she won't, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but he's not going to be a candidate for very long, so let's give it a shot. We're still waiting for her. See how long he's going to be a candidate. What did you think when she called you up about this?
I got a heads up. I have sources within the building.
Nice work. Look,
yeah.
You should know. In fact, if you didn't know in advance, then you weren't qualified for the job.
Exactly. So I got a call. I was heading into a doctor's appointment Because I was I was there for home leave. I lived in London. It was the first time I'd come home in 9 months.
It's like just moved to
I
London,
had just moved to London. I was starting what was supposed to be this overseas adventure, this glamorous adventure where I got to travel the world and really live what was my dream job and my dream life. And I purposefully didn't come back to New York for 9 months so that I could really feel at home there and I wouldn't miss my old life. So I finally come back, and I'm going to this doctor's appointment, and I get a call from my source who says, heads up, Deborah Turnus is going to assign you to the Trump campaign. Says it really fast. And I said, I'm sorry, what? Assign me to what? And he said, you better figure out what you want to do. Verdi's going to call you. Verdi's one of our bosses. And Verdi's the kind of person that you want to have an answer when he calls, otherwise you'll find yourself in an uncomfortable position. And so I paced around. I called a friend of mine who was an embed on the Romney campaign in 2012, and I told him what they were proposing, and he just laughed. And he laughed, and he kept on laughing. And then finally, when he stopped laughing, he said, yeah, it'll be short.
Did you fear you were being set up? Did that ever go in the back of your mind?
No, not that I was set up. I had a conversation with one of my old news directors today, and he was congratulating me on the book, and he said, do you remember coming to see me to talk about this decision and what you were doing, and just bursting out in tears and saying, they don't take me seriously? And I didn't remember that. I apparently wiped that from my memory. But I remember feeling like, well, is this a good idea for my career? If they really thought that I could do this, wouldn't they assign me a candidate that had more staying power? But I mean, that's because but listen, I wasn't a political person. I wasn't a political correspondent. I hadn't lived in Washington.
Did you ever think about saying no?
I did.
Yeah? How close were you to saying no?
I was close. I was really on the fence. I had a Sicilian vacation lined up a few days before this happened with a lovely French boyfriend that I had. I was really living the life.
Well, you are describing,
it was great.
In our business, we hear the legends of the foreign correspondents, and they're all like that. They all have the boyfriend or girlfriend somewhere in another part of Europe.
Yeah.
And then friends all over the world.
Yes,
and
it's fantastic. I mean, you go to some truly
There's
terrible
a reason Richard
places
Engel
sometimes.
is addicted to it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, God love him, but he's addicted to the lifestyle.
And you can't
sometimes.
blame him because you get to see everything, you get to meet a ton of people, and it's a wonderful romantic experience. It's a dream job. So I thought about saying no, but then again I said, it won't be that long.
So you've been on this sabbatical from your previous job. No. Did you ever think you were going to write a book about this experience? When did you decide to start chronicling it?
I'm going to blame Peter Alexander for this. Because early on in the campaign, when Donald Trump kept making news and just wouldn't stay out of the headlines, he said to me, you really should take notes. Everyone told me when I got on the campaign trail.
By the way, everybody says
notes.
this to you.
Everyone says this. Whenever you
this.
get on a campaign, that's what the first
White
thing they
House,
say.
whatever. Take notes.
Take notes, take notes, take notes, take notes. And I remember hearing the advice and thinking, yeah, I should. And I took some notes early on like that. And then I put it out of my head because this was all consuming. And the idea of writing a book about it just seemed far-fetched. But around the winter, late winter, early spring of 2016, I thought about it more seriously because it was so unbelievable that it felt like somebody needed.
It's a good title for a book.
Yeah, it's great. Needed to write it down, and not to do a big political analysis of what it really means for America, but more just to document the day-to-day insanity that was this campaign. Insanity in terms of travel, in terms of not knowing where you were going, not knowing what would happen the next day. The campaign was difficult. The candidate was unpredictable, or predictable in his unpredictability. It just felt like something that if you didn't write it down, nobody would believe it.
Did you ever say, I shouldn't write this book yet? I should wait.
Yes.
And then why now? That's either Putin or Trump. I don't know, one or the other.
Something the ceiling's going to rip open and we're going to get struck down by lightning. I think what we are in danger of doing today, we did last year, which was discount what happened and discount the political devotion that Donald Trump's supporters had and still do have, and misunderstand once again why he resonated the way he did. And I think this book is a really good reminder when someone comes along and says, oh, you know what, he has just gone too far, and people are galvanized in a way they weren't before, and there's no way he can get reelected. And we'll just broad brush discount everything, everybody that supported him. I think it's a good reminder, hey, remember all of the things that happened. I'm sure you can't remember a good portion of them. He went after the Pope.
Yeah.
I forgot about that until I started writing.
He may do it again.
He might do it again. And it needed to be put down in writing that this was something unlike anyone had ever seen, and it was something that is important to try to understand.
What do you want them to get out of the book? What do you want them to are they learning about Donald Trump, the individual? Are they learning about what it's like to be a network correspondent? What it's like to be a member of the media in this polarized age? What are the lessons you're hoping, or the wisdom you're trying to share with?
I think it's all of the above. Yeah. You're going to get everything in this book. This is not, again, it's not political analysis. This is not a deep dive into, the makings of Donald Trump. We get that every single day in a really well done way from the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and NBC News and CBS and ABC and everybody, and CNN. This is not that book. This is a book that shows you what it is like for a journalist to face down somebody who is attacking the Fourth Estate, attacking the institution, what I think is one of the most important institutions in our country. We hold power accountable. Without us, it would just be propaganda. It's important. But then also, I think part of the problem we face, Chuck, is that people don't know us any longer. Mm-hmm. They don't interact with us. They don't see us as regular human beings, mm-hmm. people with lives back home, people who struggle to zip up their pants sometimes because they've eaten too much road food. The everyday, the mundane aspects of life that can be quite entertaining when you're living out of a suitcase.
He ever resonate with you?
Yeah.
You think? Boy,
no, he did. He absolutely did.
Donald Trump. I see what he's getting at there.
Absolutely. He totally did. And I talk about this in the very beginning of the book. I do get it. I mean, you can't send your kid to school with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because someone has a peanut butter allergy. You can't tell a off-color joke or a joke because you're worried you are going to get fired. The idea that patriotism sometimes gets labeled racism or xenophobia. We went to towns and we saw main streets that were, if not boarded up, just very empty and desolate. Big box corporations have taken over. There aren't kids riding their bikes around town. There aren't young families. There are just places that didn't seem as vibrant as we remembered America to be. And I think people who looked around and they saw that and they felt like they were screaming at the top of their lungs in a room full of people wearing earplugs, looked at Donald Trump and said, what do I have to lose?
He used to say that. What do you have to lose?
He would say that.
Yeah, he would say that. Let's talk about the first time. You talked about that first rally in New Hampshire, which was not like the rallies we've all come to know and fear. Sorry, I mean, that climate, I parachuted in. I didn't have to I got to parachute in to do the backstage interview or the backstage this.
Yeah.
I remember one time he said, why don't you come out? And I'm like, first of all, God only knows what he'll say about you in the interview. You know, that's like, you don't want to be a spectacle.
I have an idea.
Oh, me too. But when was this first time when you felt him move the crowd against the media? Where you saw that feeling, and perhaps it was when they put the media physically in the middle of the rally.
That was in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, when did that first start? Let's start with that. When did the first time that the Trump campaign decided to make the media pen almost like the centerpiece of the audience?
I don't know when the exact first time was, because we were always somewhat in the center, if not, you know.
It's usually in the back.
It's in the back, but these were really large places.
Right.
We were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, though, and this is the time when I think I felt it most acutely. Other than the Muslim Band-Aid, we can get into that. But Grand Rapids, Michigan, this was December of 2015. We are in I think it's like an 8,000-person arena, sports arena. And the press pen, it's a couple days before Christmas, the press pen is in the middle of the arena, on the floor. There's probably 30 to 50 maybe of us. In the media, surrounded by bicycle racks, and the rest of the place is filled with Donald Trump supporters up in the rafters and everything. You are literally surrounded. It's like a Roman Colosseum, as I write in the book. And Donald Trump is up on stage, and this is around the time that Putin called him, he thought he called him a genius. He really called him something more akin to colorful.
His stablemate.
His stablemate on 60 Minutes.
Stablemate.
His stablemate, which makes no
Such a
sense.
great line.
I don't know.
I don't know what it means either, but
Me neither. So a couple days before, you know, he's praising Putin, and he's on with our colleague Joe Scarborough, and Scarborough is you know, it sounds like he's called in from his bed. Maybe he was doing that. I don't know, but that's what it sounded like.
it's what we've all assumed.
What's what we've all assumed.
The phoners are from bed.
Yeah.
Have to be.
Or, you know, sitting around the breakfast table with Melania, who knows. And Joe Scarborough said, this is a man who kills his political opponents. Political dissidents turn up mysteriously dead. Journalists turn up mysteriously dead in Russia. I covered some of those stories when I was overseas for that short time I was there. I mean, I know the stories of journalists who dared to question the Putin regime getting shot in the head point blank in the elevator of their own apartment building. It gives me chills just talking about it. It is terrifying. And Donald Trump waved it off. You know, we do a lot of bad things too. So this is the climate. And then he gets on stage a couple days later and he brings up Putin because the media had obviously been talking about this. And he says...
Great ratings.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Yeah. And he says something like, you know, they think that I would kill journalists. I wouldn't kill journalists. But then he like pauses for dramatic effect and does this bit of a wink. Maybe I would. I hate them. No, I wouldn't kill them. And the entire place is roaring. They're booing at us or they're laughing at him. And maybe the vast majority of those people knew he was really joking and saw it as one big act. But it only takes one person to not take it that way and to take it a step further and to feel like part of their problems are because we are against him. To climb those bicycle racks. Maybe they're not going to do it while Secret Service is in the room, but once he leaves,
They leave.
they leave. And suddenly the press is all alone. And it's scary, and we are far outnumbered. I remember I got on the Exchange, the morning call that NBC News has, that next morning, and I said, I got to tell you guys, I was terrified.
Do you think we listened well enough to you? And I say this, when I say we, I'm speaking for the collective of NBC, because I've been thinking about this a lot while reading your book. And obviously, how we covered him as candidate Trump. When I say we, the collective we here, not one individual network, but the collective we. We've all gotten a lot of criticisms, too rally focused, there's a lot of, and we can get into that. But do you think we in New York and Washington fully appreciated what was happening in these rallies at the time? And when do you finally think we got the message?
I think at first, no, because I think it reads very different on television than it does when you're in the room. It just does, and that went both ways. One, it sometimes looked more serious in the room than it did when you were
I remember
there.
there'd be times we'd all panic, you know. Andrea's in the room, and Andrea'd be like, "We got to do something about this," and then Katy would say, "It's okay. No, 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 no."
Or there are times where he was very clearly joking. There was a time when we were outside of DC and there was a baby crying and he said, "Get the baby out." It was very clearly a joke.
Right.
But on TV it didn't necessarily read that way, and it lit up like wildfire. On the other side, sometimes the room felt much more threatening than it did on television. NBC figured it out, and so did all the other networks. When they should have. And a lot of us had security on the campaign trail, which is, I guess, extraordinarily unusual.
It's beyond extraordinarily unusual. I mean, this is not Secret Service putting an extra agent on the press pen. This was news organizations hiring separate security guards.
Armed security guards. These were former Secret Service agents who would come with us wherever we went. And we got to know them really well. They're all incredible guys, and some women as well. And they would stand outside of the rallies with us and just keep an eye on things. They would stand outside of Trump Tower with us. I mean, if any of you happened to walk by Trump Tower and say hi to anyone in the media while we were standing out there, a lot, and you felt like some guy was trying to push you away, it was one of our security members, because there was a real concern. And remember, put this into context. 2 journalists in Virginia were murdered on live TV.
Live television. Yep.
About 2
Not that long ago. Yes.
Now, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Turned out to be a weird lover's quarrel, but still, it could have been. We don't know what that was.
Still, we don't know, and so it was a really scary time.
What would be, so he'd single you out at one of these. The first time he did it, what was the social media reaction?
I mean, he did it so many times before anyone paid any attention. But the first time that people actually, I think, really noticed it was the Muslim ban day. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he would tweet, and they would notice it on Twitter. Muslim ban day. Well, there was my birthday. Daphne Linzer, she's in here and she'll laugh at this. My birthday of 2015, I was at a Trump rally in New Hampshire, and he called me terrible, and it was a great birthday present. Anyway.
Did somebody inform him that it was?
I don't think anyone told him it was my birthday, or maybe they did, and that's why he did it. Who knows? He didn't like the poll numbers that I reported about Ben Carson, as if I control the poll numbers. Anyway. But the Muslim ban day, this was December. Sorry, I have all these dates in my head. It's probably, I sound like Rain Man.
You should write a book and write it all down. Be able to get a good oh, right, that's what we're.
Yeah, exactly. December 7th, 2015. This is Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah. What better day to do the Muslim?
What better day to do the Muslim ban
than on Pearl Harbor Day?
And it was actually just a day that just seemed a little dull. President Obama gave a speech the day before about terrorism. San Bernardino had just happened a few days earlier, and he was addressing the country. And Donald Trump, I guess, wanted to come out much in just the opposite fashion of President Obama, really hard line. So he catches all of us off guard by announcing in an email blast that he would ban all Muslims from coming in the country. We had just little color behind the scenes. When you're in Charleston, South Carolina, you try to eat as much food as you can because that is the culinary capital of this country. And we had just, Ali Vitale and Anthony Terrell, my producer, and I had just stuffed our faces at a great lunch place. And we went back to our hotel to I smile when I talk about this because I love the food. It's the best part of the whole trail. We went back to the hotel to...
Not an accident, by the way, just a quick aside, that the longtime chief political writer of the New York Times was also one of their best food critics.
There you go.
The late Johnny Apple. Trust us, when you're all around the road, you start learning the local.
That's what you do.
The local haunt, and you certainly think you know what you're talking about better than most food critics. But anyway.
I do. You should talk to me about food
ma'am.
sometime. If you ever need a recommendation in Charleston, let me know. Anyways, we went back to the hotel to get a jacket. It was a rainy, miserable day, and Sopan Deb, who I think might be here, was there. He's a CBS embed. He was really great at tweeting the whatever Donald Trump said whenever he said it. Was sitting on his computer, and he gets this email blast before Ali Vitale and I do, and he just his face just drops. He looked like a cartoon, and he starts laughing awkwardly. What's going on? He's like, oh, you'll get it in 6 seconds. So Ali Vitale and I are aggressively refreshing our email.
Oh my.
And then it pops up, and it is this unexplainable statement. How do you explain what he is trying to do? And it was so broad at the time.
The total and complete shutdown phrase?
Total and complete shutdown of all Muslims entering this country. It was so broad, there was no detail. The campaign couldn't answer whether or not that meant Muslim soldiers who were deployed overseas, Muslim athletes who were competing overseas, Muslim citizens who might be visiting family overseas. Did that mean he was also going to deport Muslims? Nobody understood it. It's a long story to get to a short answer.
Sorry.
So we go to the rally, and this is in the belly of a old World War II warship. And it's right outside of Charleston, South Carolina. A bunch of vets. We go up and down the line. Ali Battaglia does interviews with everybody up and down the line and tries to find anyone who might think that maybe this isn't a good idea. And the most that she could find in that immediate reaction was, this is before he took the stage, was, I've got to think about it. The rest of them said this was a great idea. Some went further, and an Iraq War vet said, it is an insult to all of those I served with to have any of them in this country. A better idea would be to ship them all back. So that was what it was like. And, you know, San Bernardino had just happened. Donald Trump was basically saying President Obama wasn't keeping you safe. He wasn't vetting people coming into this country. And the media is essentially complicit in this because we're not reporting the truth, what he saw as the truth. And so they're angry, and they feel scared, and they feel threatened. And who is the proxy?
Meanwhile, two random people, as far as the president's concerned, just tried to shoot up people in San Bernardino.
Yeah.
I mean, let's keep reminding, like, this is the climate and the atmosphere and the concern.
Yeah. And the proxy for all of that anger directed at, the proxy for the establishment, for the Obama administration, is this group of reporters who are pressed up in this press pen, which is smaller than usual, and this place is more crowded than usual. We're slammed up against a wall, but we're still in the middle of the room. We're surrounded on all sides. There's really no way to get out. And Donald Trump takes the stage, and he takes a long route to get into the Muslim ban, talks about his poll numbers, which he always started with, no matter the occasion. Yes. And you know, he was angry at me about a tweet I sent a couple days earlier.
This may have been at the time when the campaign used to actually call me to complain about your tweets.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I remember when we would get some of his minions that would do that too. If they weren't satisfied with complaining to you, they complained to she's tweeting.
Well, they would, Hope Hicks would email me and say, Mr. Trump thinks your tweets are disgraceful. Not nice. That's what I wanted to title the book, actually. Not nice. But I got overruled. Unbelievable is a lot better. Anyway, she sent me an email a couple days before and said that, and he sent off these tweets saying that I should get fired, Soap and Deb as well. And I mean, the waves of insults. You know what it's like when Donald Trump tweets you. Mm-hmm. When Donald Trump tweets you, it's like he awakens this.
It unleashes, I guess what I'm trying to get at here and try to get you to share here, because it's very hard to share sometimes. It unleashes some demons.
People were saying things to me that I
didn't know that people would say in the English language.
Yeah, I mean, saying things that I couldn't believe, but also threatening my life. I mean, there's one in particular that I'm thinking of, you know, we should kill them all, let's start with Katy.
By the way, I heard people gasp. That wasn't the first time you got a death threat. How many death threats? How often?
I don't know.
Right. You've run out of, you can't keep track of how many times.
How many have you gotten?
But that's the thing. Right now, in this era, I don't have a hard number. I'm guessing you don't have a hard number either.
No, and you couldn't possibly have one because you couldn't scroll through the messages you get. And I mean, people would send things to my office that were questionable. Somebody sent me a dozen roses, which maybe was nice, I don't know. But the card was, there will be a day. Well, no idea what that means. It terrified me. Yeah, so it unleashes this anger. So I was already feeling it, and I was keeping a low profile that day because I just felt like after he called me out, I don't want to be the most visible person out there. And so I sat down on the press riser to, I don't want to say hide, but just Keep a low profile.
Right.
And I'm taking notes. And it's like the theme. And then I heard my name. And he's saying, little Katy, she's back there. Not just Katy Tur's a liar. Katy Tur, she's back there, pointed at me. And the whole place was just alive with anger. Men were standing on their chairs, just yelling at me. And one woman booing. I saw one woman to my left, an older woman, and she just looked horrified on my behalf. And my phone again starts buzzing. But you know, what do you do? What do you do in that situation? You put it aside. You don't run out there, screaming, I'm scared. That's not going to help you. So I smiled and I waved.
Right.
I really didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And I just got on with it. And then he announced the Muslim ban, and I did a couple hits for Chris Matthews and then Chris Hayes. And then, the room started to empty, and one of Trump's staffers shooed away people that were lingering around the press pen, and then pointed out, said, these two guys are going to walk you to your car. And it was 2 Secret Service agents.
So it's Trump staffers.
It was one Trump staffer.
What was actually worried about your safety?
Yeah. I don't know if this extended to anybody else in
Sure.
the campaign, but this one person.
But there was some awareness somewhere in the campaign that, wait, this may have gone too far.
Yeah.
How often, after that moment, did you notice Secret Service lingering more around the press pen?
They were, I don't know if they posted an extra person. They might have.
It always felt like they did.
It felt like there was increased, it did. It felt like there was increased security around the press pen. It died down after that a little bit. It got a little less aggressive and in your face. But, in the middle of the primaries and then certainly during the general election, it got really tough again. It got really angry. And there were points when the media would walk into these rallies, these 10,000 person rallies. And this was when we would all come in together because there was a press plane and everybody arrived together.
They would see it like
so they would see us all walk
a parade.
in. Yeah, and they would scream, "Drop dead media," or "CNN sucks."
CNN sucks, yeah. Friends at CNN took the brunt of this a little bit more
they
than
really
all of us.
did, and in many ways. But they kept doing their jobs, which is exactly what you do.
How did you compartmentalize?
I don't know. I grew up in the family that covered the news for a living. My parents were helicopter journalists, and they did some pretty serious journalism.
So basically,
in
you're
Los
trying to do
Angeles.
journalism and fly a helicopter. Yeah, I would say that you got to have a steady.
My mom would
you gotta
hang.
have-
My mom would hang. She never gets any credit, and I feel bad because my dad is this larger than life personality, and he was the voice, and he was just he was really good at live reporting. But my mom would literally. They're both amazing. My mom would literally hang out of the helicopter.
She was that journalist? I would see
Yeah.
that. Like hold on and have a
She
camera
had a
too?
harness, this yellow harness or
God.
beige harness that you attached to the helicopter, and she'd hang out. The helicopter skids would be here, and there would just be a free fall. And she had a beta cam on her shoulder. It was like a 50-pound beta cam, something like that.
When did you notice that your parents were risking their lives every day?
I
to
didn't.
do
I didn't
journalism?
until I was an adult, because it just seemed so normal. I did not until I was adult, because that's just what they did.
Right.
But anyway, they covered the LA riots, and this was the beating of Reginald Denny. They were the ones that caught this on camera. The guy that got pulled from the red gravel truck and beaten to within an inch of his life by gang members in Los Angeles, and the police were just gone. The police had abandoned the city, and they were shooting at the helicopter. They found bullet damage. My parents said they found bullet damage in the engine blades, which could have taken that thing down.
Right.
My mom says she found bullet damage in the battery beneath her seat. There was a battery underneath her seat. It's hard to even comprehend now. But anyway, after that, they got a lot of death
Now you're
threats.
thinking, geez, in Donald Trump land, there was no bullets.
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
They got death threats. So it seems like that was what you do when you're a journalist. You deal with this stuff to get the story out.
How would you tell people you kept your impartiality?
I just put it aside. You don't think about it every day. If you think about it every day, how would you get out of bed? Just put it aside.
It's easy to say, but it is hard.
part of it was just the sheer exhaustion of running around. You just don't have time to think about anything else. And he's constantly making news. There's stories that are breaking every day. Maggie Haberman's got a scoop every 4 seconds. You're trying to keep up with her. It's almost impossible. I mean, I don't think she sleeps. I thought about starting a hashtag, go to sleep Maggie, because I would go to sleep, and I slept like 4 hours a night. I would go to sleep and she would be tweeting. I would wake up.
You know what that meant.
And she would be tweeting.
Right. Hey, Haberman's reporting this. What do you got, Katy?
She's an incredible woman.
Also the child of another journalist.
Exactly. We're sick people. And we breed other journalists.
Been bred to be journalists.
Anyway, so you had so much to do every day. You had so much to do and that you couldn't think about it.
How much do you think your gender played a role in the meanness that candidate Trump leveled at you? And you mentioned the Sopan Debs in the room, which I think is something. It's not like he didn't spare male journalists.
No, he called Tom Yamas a sleaze.
That's right. But I'm sorry,
It's not.
I could see it here, well, he works for ABC now instead of NBC. I'm kidding, Tom. No, he was an embed for NBC. So, ABC has to hire their best journalists from NBC. That's what
Oh. Get competitive.
we are very competitive. But it does seem different in how he treats women journalists.
He goes after everybody. You could say that he uses different words for women journalists. He goes after women journalists a little bit more relentlessly. You could argue that. His supporters certainly treat women a little bit differently.
Talk about that.
I don't think that any male journalist was called the CUNT, both on Twitter and in real life. I don't think any of my male counterparts got called a bimbo. I don't think they got cut down in the same way that I got cut down by the supporters, by the online harassment. But that's nothing new. I mean, women in any field are cut down in different ways than
This
men
election felt different because we had the possibility of electing the first woman president.
And that's what's so
Did that
fascinating.
add to
But
this
that's what's
weird
so
vibe?
fascinating about Donald Trump. I'll answer that question second.
Yes, ma'am.
About Donald Trump. Instead of doing what any other candidate might do, which is be somewhat careful or deferential to this idea that he's running after a woman, he does this with everything you can criticize him for. He runs right into it.
He runs to controversy.
He
I've always said this.
runs to controversy.
If there's he's like a moth to a flame. Isn't it?
Yeah, I'm running against a woman. She's only here because she's a woman. He says exactly the thing that you would never say. And it works for him. It worked for him. What was the other question?
No, I mean, it is, I get it. Do you feel as if the fact that it was a campaign between a woman nominee, that the criticism was even harder on you?
Potentially. But
Did you feel that, or you don't know?
I don't know, because I haven't covered another political campaign, so I don't have anything to measure it against.
By the way, I don't know how we're ever going to get you to cover a conventional campaign. I mean,
thought
they're
sounds
not like
nice.
this. They're really not.
Can I just have a nice relationship with people? I mean, a tough relationship, certainly to report the truth, but a cordial one. Can call them and not get berated. Be nice. Get the phone calls answered. It'd be great.
Let me ask it this way. What would you tell 25-year-old Katy Tur about becoming a network correspondent
I would say
covering Donald Trump?
you're not going to believe this. I would say a number of things. You're not going to believe this, but in 2015, you're going to find yourself sitting on a set with Chuck Todd.
Oh, no.
Talking about an interview you did with Donald Trump, who's running for president, and then getting complimented by Andrea Mitchell? No, I would have laughed in my face. But I think my 25-year-old self would be really proud and excited to become my 33-year-old self.
It's amazing. You're only 33. How about that? You have a candidate that you're covering that is whipping up crowds against the press. At the same time, part of your job is not to cover the candidate, just the candidate. Part of your job is to also cover the people.
Yeah.
That is appealing to him. how much harder was it to have those conversations? You're doing the voter conversations that you want to have. Like, what is it? What motivated you to come here? I can't believe you stood in line 3 hours. It's like 20 to below zero here. Why did you do this? Did it make those conversations harder? Did these people want to talk to you more, talk to you less?
It was
or
mixed.
Those interactions.
Some wanted to talk to me less. Some would say
I
that
got
they
your questions here.
believed I was just very biased and they didn't think it was worth talking to me. Others would say, I saw you with Chris Matthews. Can I have a selfie? Let's talk. Which actually happened quite a bit. I was surprised. And others were just really open to explaining why they did support him. I found it, yes, some days were harder than others. But on the whole, it was really fascinating to hear what they saw in him and why they believed in him, and to try and understand the phenomena. I don't think anybody really understands what happened in 2016. I think if anybody comes to you and says, here's how it all went down and here's why Donald Trump was elected, I've got a bridge I can sell you.
Yeah.
Is that how it goes? It's bad.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I don't think anyone really
Or a
knows.
Trump or a tower that I can lend my name to for you to build.
Oh yeah, that works.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really fully understands it, and I think it will take a lot of time for us to really comprehend the full picture of it. But I will say this: it was fascinating to find out why they were angry and why they believed, frustrated, ignored, whatever, why they believed that Donald Trump was the person that would change things, why they related to Donald Trump.
That's always been the question I get. How is it that a New York City, Fifth Avenue Manhattanite billionaire
He's their working class billionaire.
is somehow the man of the people, of the working class people? What would they say to you? What were the standard responses? Because we'd all ask them these questions.
He understands me. He sees me. He's talking about what I want him to talk about. He sounds like me. He's not afraid.
He says what I can't. That was
what
my
I
always
can't
favorite.
say.
He says what I can't.
He never backs down. He never backs down. I love to see you guys squirm, the media. All politicians are liars. Donald Trump has flaws, but at least he's not a liar. They would say that. They would say that. Some said it with less of a straight face.
Right.
But it is also important to remember that it's not like the media had some magic bullet, some silver bullet. If we said the right thing, the right time, enough, that Donald Trump supporters would be convinced not to vote for him. That's a ludicrous idea. We reported.
We're not here to tell people how to vote.
No, we're not going to.
People forget this about journalists. You were not there to tell anybody how to vote.
No, and I'm not there to convince anybody to vote a certain way. I'm there to, and you're there, and journalists are there to tell you what is happening and what we see, and to put it in context, and to hold them accountable for the things they say,
Okay.
to talk about the policy they may or may not have.
What didn't we see in time? What didn't we see about the Trump phenomenon that you saw? And if you could travel back in time and pound it in our head, this was the moment. This is what I was seeing, guys.
They made their decision early, way before any of us expected them to. He went after John McCain. John McCain is an American war hero. Regardless, you don't go after vets. You don't go after people who served in the military.
A Republican primary in Iowa.
You don't.
Like, it's just I hate to say it, of all places, the heartbed of the heart. This is, when you say the heartland of America, Iowa is the first thing you think of. Sorry, Illinois.
Especially when you haven't served
or Ohio,
yourself.
or Nebraska. Yeah.
And he did. And I was on a phone call with a senior member of the Republican National Committee right after this happened, and the person was just hammering in my head, this will never stand. American voters will never accept this. He is done.
Is this a member of the RNC that became White House press secretary? Because that guy also told me that Hillary Clinton was going to win 350 electoral votes the day before the election. So anyway, is it that guy?
I don't reveal my sources. That's interesting, though.
Oh, it's
Can we
my
talk
favorite
about that?
anecdote. It's my favorite anecdote on that one.
They did not think they were going to win.
No, they didn't. When did you know he could win?
When he did that and his poll numbers went up. I just...
What, the McCain thing?
Yeah, but I mean, I wasn't listening to myself back then. What the heck did I know? What the heck did I know? I turned on the television and everybody who's done this for longer than I have, who is much smarter than me, was saying this could never happen. So I believed what I was hearing on television.
First mistake. Fake news.
But I think we should have paid a lot more attention back in December and back in January. Certainly South Carolina, when we saw the exit polls out of South Carolina that said people had made up their minds a long time ago. Didn't matter what he said after that.
What I'm gonna get to your questions, but what's his most redeeming quality?
He is charming. And he can be very nice. He can be very fun to talk to.
Privately though, just not in public.
Privately. Sometimes in public he'll be nice. I mean, he's not, I don't think he one-on-one, he wants to be liked. He really does want to be liked. And when he isn't liked, I don't know, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't want to get into it, but like,
Agree on that.
you know, when he's with you one-on-one, he just wants to have a conversation. Usually about his poll numbers and how much whether or not he's going to win, but he's not attacking you to your face and telling you you're a liar and you're terrible and disgraceful.
You're only that after you don't do what he wants you to do.
Yes. And not to your face ever. One-on-one. Without a camera present.
First question here from Facebook. Casey Stone asked the following. It's actually similar to a question I was going to ask you from the book. I teach middle school. Where some of your influences, and how can we drive young, let's see here. I teach middle school, who were some of your influences, and how can we drive young women towards success?
Oh gosh, some of my influences. I might sound like I've got tunnel vision. My parents were my biggest influences. My parents and my grandmother, my family in general. My parents are remarkable people. They did remarkable things in journalism.
Was there ever a question about you going into journalism?
Oh, I hated it. I did not want to do it. No, there's no way in hell.
So
there was no way in hell. My dad would put a camera in my face and I would run the opposite direction. I hated it.
All right, when did that flip?
I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be a lawyer, but I got weeded out in chemistry. I'm terrible at math. I was a philosophy major in college, thinking that I could use it to take the LSAT. And then I was sitting in a counselor's office one day, and they're like, well, this is what you need to get into UCLA, and it's this much schooling. And I was like, oh, God. No, I'm done. And the story goes, I was driving back to UCSB from Los Angeles with my college boyfriend at the time, and there was a fire in Malibu, and my dad had made me he had always made me press passes. It was like silly ones when I was a kid, but when I got older, he took my grandmother's in the business, my grandmother's press pass. She had passed away, but he just, years earlier, he pasted my picture over hers. It was Judy Tur. He pasted my picture over hers and just left the Y in her name and then relaminated it, the LA Sheriff's press pass. And anyway, I used it. It's probably not a good idea to do that. Don't do that. I think it's a felony. There's a statute of limitations on these things, right?
The sheriff's office, it's state law.
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I get pardoned for that? Anyway, I got into a fire and I just was hooked. I thought, what am I doing? I want to see the world. I want to chase news. I want to be the center of the action.
You write this in your book, and I want you to expand on it. We really have to start teaching journalism in elementary school. People don't even understand the basics of what we do anymore. What do you mean by that?
I don't think we teach journalism early enough. I think people need to
Is it journalism? Is it civics? What is it?
I think it's civics. I think it's how does democracy work, number one. Number two, the history of democracy and the history of the press would be great.
Awesome poll numbers today. 26% of the country can name all three branches of government.
Oh.
33%
really?
couldn't name any of them. And then either one or two, yeah.
So yes, civics.
So obviously we need some civics lessons there, yes.
But also the role of a free press, how we do our jobs, the gathering of sources, how you confirm things. That would be great. And also how to be a discerning consumer. And I think that's one of the most difficult challenges that just American voters or voters, period, around the world face today is you can pull up a website and it's abc.co. It looks like ABC News.
Yeah, they had a bad one that some Russia fake news thing had a really good ABC News logo that they stole
It looks
with an address and
just
everything. Yeah.
like it. But if you read it, it doesn't feel right. There's something off. And I wonder how hard that is. I mean, it feels off to me because I do this every day and things weren't attributed correctly and it was just, it read like an opinion
But we know the
piece.
rules of how attribution works and all this stuff.
Yeah.
How can we expect the average consumer to know
We
about this stuff?
cannot.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to teach it early on. I don't know, maybe we can go have fairs around the country, you and me, Chuck.
There you go. Well, did you ever get in that conversation with some Trump voters? And they would say, you guys are lying about this.
Yes.
Did you ever have
Yes, of course.
And how would those interactions go?
We would try. I'd try to explain how it works, and I'd say, this is not just us making up sources. It's not just us making up the news. I mean, if I say something that's incorrect, willfully say something that is incorrect, I lose my job. It's done. I'm over. Bye.
We had a high-profile example of how we punish people in our business. I mean, I hate to say, our business has made examples of people, and it seems like the public still doesn't believe that we will get fired if we're not truthful.
There seems to be this pervasive idea that there is some suit on high who's telling us what to do and what to believe, and that we're all secretly...
The real thing is that the suit on high is not paying enough attention to us. That's what we think. I'm kidding.
But yeah, I tried to explain, we have to get two sources for things, unless it's an extraordinarily high-level source. But even then, you got to get a second source. And it runs through standards, it runs through legal, it runs through people
You're just
who are
saying
much
things.
smarter.
No. Standards, legal.
Standards
Go ahead.
are the standard practices for what is allowed on air and what is not allowed on air, what is appropriate for air and what is not appropriate. Are you putting this quote into context? Are you sure you're characterizing this story correctly? Is it fair? Do you have both sides? Or 3 sides, or 4 sides, or 5 sides, whatever it is. Legal, are we going to get sued for this? You got to go through all these many levels. Then you got to go to someone like Daphne Linzer, who will say, "No, this is not going on the air." Someone above you, and it's difficult. You just can't just walk up and say whatever you want on television.
Because this came from your number one fan, I have to ask.
Oh,
Person claims they're number one.
is it my mom?
Says mom or Matt? I haven't decided here. I guess it's Matt. Sorry, not mom. Do you miss being in the field?
I do. I would be lying if I didn't miss it. I look longingly at it. I've certainly, in a weird way, I was looking longingly at hurricane coverage and saying, God, it'd be nice to get blown around the wind. And
Man, I've never had that longing feel.
You haven't?
When you go through one, you don't want to ever do it again.
I used to chase storms for the Weather Channel.
Yeah.
I chased tornadoes. And I'm from Los Angeles. We don't have weather in Los Angeles. It barely rains, unless it's an El Nino year. So I find weather to be absolutely fascinating. I do miss being in the field. I miss talking to people. I miss getting out there. I miss the only thing I miss more than not sleeping in my own bed is sleeping in my own bed. So it's kind of a...
Give some advice to the White House beat reporters right now.
Don't trust anything they tell you.
Who weren't on the campaign, who have been thrown into this and are still trying to figure him out.
Don't use the word pivot. That's number one. I think there's a tendency to overanalyze him and to project all sorts of strategies that he might be thinking
He doesn't
of.
play chess,
No,
correct?
he doesn't.
Yes.
He doesn't. He's not playing three-dimensional chess. He
I say he
works
plays
from
a
the gut.
very aggressive game of checkers. He loves to be kinged.
Yes. And then I just wouldn't trust anything they say. And they've proven over and over again that they are not so good at telling the truth or the full truth about any situation.
What's coming that is so predictable to you, and yet we're a bit in denial about what's coming and how his presidency is going?
I don't think that support base breaks. And I don't even think I am wary to say there's this idea that if he doesn't deliver on his promises, that he will be sunk. Maybe. But I'm wary of that, and I told this story on your show today.
Yeah, I was going to share. Go ahead.
I wrote about it in the New York Times. That was a cool thing, having your byline in the New York Times. It was really cool.
Look, if you're going to be in charge of fake news, you want to be in the chief fake news newspaper.
That's right.
Right? I mean.
But the story was, I was talking to a man outside of a rally, I believe it was Ohio, and I said, why do you like Donald Trump so much? And the man told me, because he's going to build a wall. And I said, what if he doesn't build a wall? It's okay, I trust his judgment.
So Katy told this on the show today. And Katy will tell you this. We all in journalism, we acquire pen pals.
Yeah.
Okay? And they will be, sometimes they start out as just terrible critics, but maybe you shame them in their language and they literally apologize and then you start a dialogue. And I've acquired quite a few people like this. Drives my wife crazy, I think. But one of my pen pals heard her today and we were talking about the Trump in Congress, and I forwarded this to Katy, but let me read it because I thought it encapsulates this as well. The problem isn't Trump. It's not a senator or even a representative. It's not an R and it's not a D. It's Congress and their refusal to work together. Trump will work with R or D. It doesn't matter to him. He's not a D, he's not an R, and that's why the American public put him in office and will keep him there in 2020. Congress better figure out that they're the problem and they better do it pretty quick. Trump puts country before party because party doesn't matter and only serves to divide.
I don't think he cares about party. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I thought this guy understands the Trump movement better than a lot of people.
I think that they believe that Congress is the problem, not President Trump.
You don't believe he'll get blamed for inability?
Not by all of them.
Because it'll be Congress's fault.
No, yeah, exactly. And I have this weird feeling that because he's claimed he's a deal maker, and because he doesn't matter who he works with, and because he has no allegiance to either party, that at some point Congress is just going to have to start working. I wonder, and then will Donald Trump get the credit for that? I don't know. This is just spitballing ideas that I have in my head sometimes.
We've talked about some of the tough, low moments of covering this campaign. What was the highlight? Covering him.
The people that I got to work with. The highlight was, you're not sitting on Meet the Press with you, Chuck. That was.
By the way, she'll be on Sunday.
Yeah.
Be sure to tune in, please.
It was, and I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here. That was an amazing experience.
But what about on the trail?
The people that I worked with. Yeah. It was fascinating to see the country, to talk to people, and to learn about this movement that was happening, this historic movement. But the Trump press corps, they're a group of incredible people. Major Garrett, Carl Cameron, Tom Yamas, Sarah Murray, Jim Acosta. Sarah Murray is one of my best friends, and I got to hang out with her on the trail every day, which was great. And the Embeds, Ali Vitale, my producer Anthony Terrell, Sopan Deb, everybody. They're all really awesome, hardworking, fun people. And it's the sort of thing where you really bond with them in a way that you don't expect. It's like bonding with those folks that you were in your college dormitory with. You're forced to be together. Luckily, we all really liked each other. And then, and you might find this to be trite, but NBC had an incredible team of political journalists on the trail. And
we had a good year.
We had a really good year.
We had a good team.
The people, Casey Hunt, Andrea Mitchell, Kristen Welker, Hallie Jackson, Peter Alexander, Kelly O'Donnell. Chris Jansing, those are some real heavyweights. And we broke a lot of news. And I think we covered it on the TV side better than anybody else did. Mm-hmm. And it was very exciting to be a part of that movement. It was especially exciting to be a part of what was essentially the first female-led politics team in network news history. The candidates, me and Hallie on Donald Trump, Casey, Kristen, and Andrea on Hillary Clinton.
What was interesting about that is that internally there wasn't a lot of chatter about this.
No.
And it was such a outside phenomenon. It was great, but it was like the perfect way you want something. It was like others noticed. We weren't sit there to say, oh, look at us. Aren't we this or aren't we that? Because the decisions weren't made for any reason other than, well, this person will be doing that. And this person's the best fit for that.
I don't think many of us were in the front of the pack either to cover these candidates in the beginning. When you just were spitballing who's gonna cover who. I think I was. I certainly know I wasn't. I think I was low down.
I think your great strength in this campaign is something that there's not enough, that I'm always concerned about in political journalism, and I think that you brought something which has been there, done that disease. The biggest problem and the biggest reason why all of us experts, I think, miss this is that, oh yeah, we've been there, done that. You know, we've heard that Ross Perot garbage before. We've heard that Donald Trump stuff before. We've, you know, the older versions of it. Oh, we've seen George Wallace before, and this or that. You're a reminder. Fresh perspectives matter a lot, and I think we benefited because we had more fresh perspective than our competition, and yet we still didn't listen to you soon enough. That's been my biggest takeaway from your book is, God damn it, we didn't listen to her soon enough.
Well, now I know. Thank you.
No, I mean, I say that because I'm curious, what would you do differently? You got to cover the re-elect. How would you do it differently?
I would brush up on all of the stuff that I didn't know. I would go back and brush up on political history. I would like to know more about it than I know at the moment. I'm absorbing, I'm learning, I'm reading, but it's the more you know, the more you don't know. That, and I'd more loudly demand that we do voter-based stories. Voter-based stories. Let's talk to people, let's talk to people, let's talk to people, let's talk to people. Let's go into these towns and do stories about communities. Let's get local. Let's not just cover the candidate. Let's get out there and let's talk about what's happening on the ground across America. That's how I'd like to do it.
You say that every cycle.
I know, and I don't know why we don't do it.
I don't either.
I wish we did.
Do you think if we would have discovered the opioid crisis sooner?
Yeah. I think we would have seen the frustration a lot sooner. I think if we were out there and going to Michigan, even without a candidate, Wisconsin, Minnesota, I think we would have seen what the Clinton campaign didn't see.
Let me ask you
which
this.
was this turn.
What would Hillary Clinton have learned by spending a day in your shoes?
I think she would have truly learned what political devotion looks like.
That's interesting.
And I don't think maybe she wouldn't have called everybody a deplorable.
How important of a moment was that?
I thought that was catastrophic. You don't go after the voters. I mean, it gave them a reason to rally together. You're going after me.
There's the mumbles in here. You always know when I always think, oh, we're hitting on something here.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It was like a gift to them. I remember talking to somebody in the campaign right after it happened, and they said, oh, we're going to go all out with this. We're going to have themes. And right after that, they came out with the Les Miserables, Les Déplorables. My French is horrible. And it helped. They had people made T-shirts. It was a rallying cry. It wasn't a good idea.
Would she have understood the electorate better by spending time at a Trump rally? And I say this because there's vast amounts of politicians walking around Washington who don't understand the Trump phenomenon.
I think
Would they understand it better
Yes.
having been in Grand Rapids with you one night?
Yes. And I think that goes for Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
It goes for Paul Ryan. It goes for Hillary Clinton. It goes for Chuck Schumer. Anyone. Bernie Sanders saw it because a lot of there were some crossover voters there. I know she got 3 million more votes. I'm not discounting those 3 million more votes, but we are a country that works off an electoral college. And Donald Trump won the electoral college, even if he lost the popular vote. And regardless of whether or not the next person wins the popular vote against Donald Trump, what matters is getting out and finding a way to connect to voters in all 50 states. Not just blue states, not just red states. I think there needs to be a lot more crossover. Listen, I know I sound like an idealist here, but I think what boggles my mind still is just this divide and this inability to get along or to agree on anything, and that is what I think people underestimate about folks who voted for Donald Trump. A lot of them were just sick of the arguing, sick of it. And I think there's a lot of Hillary Clinton voters who are sick of the arguing.
Why do so many people who think they know Donald Trump, why are they convinced he won't finish his term? Forget that. I'm not talking about Mueller probe. But why it was amazing. It's been amazing to me how many people who claim to know him somewhat, why do you think there is this idea that at some point he walks away?
Because there's a sense from those who know him that this is not necessarily what he enjoys or wanted to do. There is a sense among some that he wanted to be called president more than he actually wanted to do the job of governing. And the evidence to support that, I mean, there's a lot, but also he's never held elected office. People who want to govern.
Right.
They do it. They grow up in it. At some point they do it. Donald Trump had none of that. His business was large, but it was the core people in the business. It was a very small business. A lot of it's branding. Mm-hmm. It's not like he owned this multinational company that had hundreds of thousands of employees, direct employees, full-time staff employees.
But I wonder if that's like the biggest misread of them all that we've had of him, that he has been more devoted to this than I think anybody ever expected.
I think there's an argument to be made for that as well. I think he's also not somebody who, I think if you tell him that he's not going to do something or that he's going to fail, he'll want to prove you wrong. It seems like he's getting a handle of it more and getting his footing more now than in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But this is a question that's very hard for me to answer because as much as I know who Donald Trump is, I'm not in his mind. And this is one of those things that you're not, only he knows that. Maybe Ivanka and Dawn and Eric know that. I don't know it for sure. What do you
tell, because there was a version of a question like this, and I'm not going to ask it the way it's in here. No offense to the person that wrote it, it's not. But I guess I'm going to reword the question this way, which is, what do you tell the voter that is petrified? I know what I say to friends and family who sit there and are just assuming apocalyptic-like results right now. And I'm always like, they're guardrails, they're this or that. What do you say to these? What do you say to a friend and
That's
family?
basically what I say. The cogs of democracy might have been dusty, but you could see them locking into place. The wheels of democracy. I'm terrible at analogies sometimes. And we saw that with the travel ban. There's limitations to executive power. We see that now with Congress saying we're not going to go along with everything you want us to do. John McCain standing up and saying we are an equal branch of government. Mm-hmm. He can't control the press. He cannot control the press. He might want to. I think there are guardrails. He's got the nuclear code, so he doesn't have guardrails for everything. But I don't know if I have the best answer for those who are terrified.
Why do you think he wanted to be president? Just for the title? Why did he want this? What's his motivation?
I think there's part of him who thought that he could make things work.
Could we look back and if it's revitalized our democratic institutions, that while maybe his presidency, whether it's considered a success or not, that the candidacy was certainly a success because it was a wake-up call?
Potentially, yes, I do. And I think it's been, in many ways, a great thing for journalism especially because look at what the Washington Post and the New York Times are doing on a daily basis. There's this arms race between the two to do better investigative journalism. And NBC and all the networks, we break a lot of stories every day. We found our voice again. And as much as people don't trust us, I think people are starting to trust us again.
Have you thought about the alternative scenario of Donald Trump loses by a handful of votes in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan? And she's narrowly elected president. How would he have handled losing like that? How would he have handled losing the way Hillary Clinton lost?
That is a really good question, and we thought about that a lot on that day. there was a real question about how he would concede. Would he concede? Would he say something so inflammatory that it would cause violence in the country? And that sounds hyperbolic, it sounds alarmist. No, there was concern about what happens if Donald Trump loses by a little. He'd been talking about voter fraud.
For weeks, especially in the month of October.
He had been saying, because they thought they were going to lose, so he was already making the excuses and laying the foundation. He was saying, you've got to watch what's going on in cities like Philadelphia. It's not very subtle. Cities like Philadelphia.
Why Philadelphia? Geez, what's not Scranton? He wasn't worried about Scranton.
He wasn't worried about Scranton.
He was worried about Philadelphia.
He was worried about Philadelphia.
I guess
the demographics. I don't know.
Ed Franklin's vote. I don't know.
Yeah, he might have risen from the dead, voted. So he had been laying that down, and he was also talking about this conspiracy, this global conspiracy between the banks and the media and the Clintons and the establishment, and they are all out to keep you, the American voter, the one who really want change and who want to see this country become great again. They're trying to stop it for their own interests. The idea that there might have been violence, I think, is not a far-fetched one.
I have to say that's been the. I've thought about that alternative, and I don't know that could have been a bleak picture.
And then what happens maybe in 2018 or 2020 if that scenario plays out, or even if it's a larger margin between the two? What happened? I mean, Chris Kobach has got this election voter fraud, election integrity commission. They're claiming there's all this voter fraud out there that there's no evidence to support. What happens with all of that? Those foundations are still being laid.
I think we're nearing the end here.
Cody, your questions are getting too hard.
Yeah. No. But I want to end on a little bit of an upbeat note. So, we've been like talking dire, which is just simply, how do you want to cover the next campaign besides what you were saying earlier? How do you want us to cover Donald Trump's reelection? How can we do this smarter and earn back that trust with the Trump voter that we're actually getting it right? Not just the public at large, but with the Trump voter.
I want to get out there and I want to be in towns for more than just the rally. I want to talk to people. I want to sit down with people at a diner and say, what are you worried about? I want to go there and I want to cover the issues that they feel are not being covered. And I want to put those on television every day and not just have two talking heads yelling at each other back and forth. Not that we do that right now. We really don't.
Yeah.
That's not a fair accounting of what we do in cable news. But I just want it to be more about the people than the candidates.
Do you think Hillary Clinton's media criticism of how we covered him is legit?
What did she say exactly?
Well, just putting on the rallies so much. And the overcoverage of the rallies, the overcoverage, she's got a beef on the email front. That's a separate conversation. That's not your beat. But I'm talking about how we covered him. That we covered him. Did we cover him too much like a celebrity? Did we cover him too much like a sporting event, a spectacle? Obviously, yes. I'm sorry. These are leading questions, Katy. In our business, no.
Yes and no. I think that, listen, when's the last time you saw 20,000 people show up for a rally 6 months before a primary? When is the last time you saw that? Name one time. When there are 16 other people in the primary.
There were moments with Obama early, but yes.
Okay, fine.
No, I mean, look, before Trump, you're right. And
in August.
By the way, not on the Republican side. We had not seen anything like this on the Republican side since I can't remember.
In August of 2015, he went to Mobile, Alabama, and he had it was blazing hot. Thunderstorms. 20,000 people showed up for this guy that everybody was laughing off. How do you not put that on television?
By the way, this is my favorite moment of I think, pure honesty from the president is when he apparently said, yeah, Jeff Sessions only endorsed me that day because he saw the crowd and freaked out. And he put on the hat and went, oh, wow, yeah, make America great again, Mobile. I think there's some truthiness to that.
The guy says what he thinks in the moment he thinks it, and he believes what he believes in the moment that he says it.
It's not a lie, Katy, if you believe it. Remember that.
We put him on TV a lot, but he was also unlike anything we'd ever seen, and we fact-checked him a lot, and we aired his controversies a lot, and we talked about all of the other lawmakers who were condemning him a lot. We did a lot of those things. I think we covered him accurately, us at NBC at least, but for most of the media, we covered him accurately, we covered him aggressively, and I don't think that us airing...
People out there are probably still going to think we were too soft.
Maybe. I don't agree.
I don't either.
I think you can point to a reporter that you thought was too soft. You can point to a publication that you thought was too soft. But en masse, I think there was some incredible journalism done. Look at David Fahrenholt, the Washington Post. Look what he did. He won a Pulitzer, and he deserved it.
Right.
I don't think us airing Donald Trump on television less would have changed the outcome of the election.
That's a myth people are holding on to, looking for someone else to blame.
I think if you're doing it, you are going to miss it again.
Katy Tur, it's unbelievable. You've had a no. You've done NBC News proud. You've done the Trump press corps proud. You've done, and I'm so glad you did the shout out to all of our supposed competitors, because you're right. You know, at the end of the day, we're all fighting under the same banner of that First Amendment. And you know, if you're getting attacked today, they're going after, you know, our brothers and sisters at other networks tomorrow. And it's all an attempt to pit us against each other. And instead, you guys stay focused on doing your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.